invite you all to the Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee for May 20th, 2024. And first thing I want to ask, do we have any sign-ups for public comments, Mark? Okay, no sign-ups there. So we're going to go right into our budget review. Before we do, however, I'm going to call on our Vice Chairman to offer a prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to dedicate this prayer to Asher and his family and how his life will live on. Okay. Let's go to our Father in prayer. Oh, Father, we love you and we praise your name. We know that all good comes from you. Father, we as a community have poured our hearts out to you over the last few weeks to work your miracle, to work your healing grace upon Asher. And we know that you listened, but you did not grant our wish. And some of us were, to be honest with you, a little irritated, including myself. But one thing we need to remember, and I pray that we do, is that you created this world. You were in control, and we were nowhere to be found when you set the cornerstone of this universe. And Father, we are so thankful for life, for this country that we live in, for the opportunities that we have, the health that we have, the abundance of food and clean air and water. We're so blessed, so much more than 90% of this earth. So, Father, we praise you for the life of Asher. We praise you for the life that he will continue in others. And we ask you to send the Holy Ghost down to surround his family and his friends and comfort them in this time of need and be with them always, Father. And let them also know that you are Lord. And it's through his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay. First up is other social, cultural, and recreation. Michael, are you going to?
I think me and the mayor may tag team this one if that's okay.
Okay, and that'll work fine. And as we go down these, we'll make explanations as needed. So I'll let you start, please.
If you'll, in your books, if you'll turn to tab 1, and it's going to be the third page in tab 1. At the top of it, it's going to say Rutherford County T Summary of Recommended Contributions. And so the first one that we're going to be talking about tonight is going to be the 56,900 category. So on the first page there, about halfway down, you'll see something that says 101, 56,900, 316 contributions. So that's the first thing that we're talking about tonight. And as you can see there, you can see what we have currently. The first column is what we're in currently today. Then was the request by the nonprofit, and then that's the mayor's recommendation is going to be that third column. So as you look through those, I will say we had some that requested a little bit larger increase, and I do believe, and I'll let the mayor speak more to this, but I do believe the mayor tried to hold them to a percentage that was similar to what we've been able to give our current county employees. And then I'll give you a second to look through that. That is all of our contributions for that category.
One thing I'll point out, it's the Laverne Senior Center. Mayor, you want to comment on that, or I can?
So they did not. You'll notice a 0 from the request and from the mayor. We did reach out to them twice after the deadline to apply, just to be sure. Our understanding in the email I received back from them was they were recently taken over by a new nonprofit. They declined to request funding this year and said that they would request next year. But we did reach out to them twice by phone and email, even after the deadline. And so that is the reason they are both 0 there from the request. But they declined to request money this year, and they said they would request next year.
So Michael, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
You're
so Michael, on
recognized.
Kamari House, did they not submit a budget?
I thought we were handling Kamari House through the opioid committee.
We are, but
And
we
so
have
I
also
don't-
not received a budget, so I'm just wondering.
I will double check, but I don't think I've received anything. I think because we communicated to them that it would be through the opioid committee. And so I will double check when I get back to the office tonight, but I do not believe we received anything from them. But it might be because we've told them to go through the opioid committee.
Because the opioid board's contribution is not recurring.
Correct.
So they will have to go all the way through the process again. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Are there any other comments from our committee? Most of these are the same. I know that we have got one added, but basically they're getting what they've asked for in the past. Slight raises here and there.
Yeah, and just to remind the committee, if I could, Mr. Chair, we did have a process, and basically it was where we could not to exceed what we were recommending as a percent increase to the employees, rounded to the closest, I think $100, wasn't it, Michael? Okay. So it's not like this was random and it was arbitrary. We tried to put a process in place that was fair to everybody, and as much as we could.
One thing I want to mention is in the past, historically, we've given the nonprofits the opportunity to speak if they wanted to. Now, assuming that they would accept the mayor's recommendation, especially when they've got what they wanted or asked for. But, I would be open if someone from one of those organizations would like to speak. Don't be shy about raising your hand. You would be recommended.
And if I can add to that, with only a couple exceptions, did any of the nonprofits reach out to my office directly for an opportunity to explain or justify the request. So these requests came through the finance department, and then the finance department forwarded their request to me, and then I went to work on the subsequent calculation that we arrived at with the mayor's request.
Okay. Are there any other questions from anybody on the committee or comments?
Yeah, on the Children's Museum Corp of Rutherford County, is that the Discovery Center?
That's correct. And we'll cover that here. I believe that's coming up under Tourism 58110.
We're discussing that more.
Yes, that'll come up under about 4 categories down under Tourism 58110, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have not heard any other comments on the proposed budget under contributions, other social, cultural, recreation, and having not heard any recommendations for change, we are going to accept the mayor's proposed budget for them and add that to our approved items. Next is the Tennessee Rehabilitation Center. Michael?
So this is the same dollar amount as it's been at least the last 3 years, as you can see. And it is the request again for, their request and the mayor's request again for next year.
Any questions on the Rehabilitation Center's budget? If I get to moving too fast, you guys stop me. Like I said, most of these are cut and dried and pretty well even from what they were in prior years. Hearing no recommendations, we'll add that to our approved column and move to Journeys in Community Living.
That is also the same as the prior item. It is the same for the last 3 years and is the same for next year.
Any questions on the Journeys in Community Living budget? No change in that budget. I don't hear any recommendations, so we're also going to add the Journeys budget to our approved column. Next is the Rutherford County Library System.
So if you'll look, this department, their request did differ from the mayor's request. They requested a little bit over an additional $70,000 over last year, and the mayor's request right now is the same as it was in the prior year.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, if I could add.
Please.
So there's a little bit of an issue here because we're trying to unwrap the fact that currently, and Chairman Harris may want to comment on this, but they're sitting on a $2.5 million fund balance. And so we're trying to figure out why the library system is running such a high fund balance proportion to their operations. And so there may be a time in the next few weeks where we come back to this committee about a change. But right now we're going to stay with the initial or tentative recommendation at the same funding level as last year.
Let me make a quick comment, and I think Chairman Harris, you want to be recognized. I have spoke to at least one of the board members, and I asked them about that balance. And basically what they were telling me, they're kind of in a flux about will they be moving, will they not? And a lot of that fund balance would be spent under renovations to the current facility, but with them not knowing whether they're moving or not. And if I misspeak, anybody here from the board wants to speak, please stand up. But that's part of the reason some of that fund balance is where it's at. But anyway, I wanted to pass that on. That was new information to me. Chairman Harris, you're recognized.
Yeah. Like the mayor said, they're sitting on a very heavy fund, and we have a problem with not being able to hire people for our jails, people for our EMSs, and we need to do a better funding and a better competitive rate for us to attract labor to come in here and work for us. So I disagree with the mayor's recommendation, and I would like to see that we cut this budget based on, and I'm pretty sure, Michael, if you can, and you might know this, comptroller, I believe we have maintenance of effort, and we can do it at a one-time cut. So might want to get with the county attorney on this, but this is what I've gotten off of that. I am wanting to cut this budget by $350,000. So that's where I stand on this. I believe they have enough money in funds to do the building that you brought up, Mr. Chairman, but I also think that this money would be better for us to go and help our department heads have a little bit more competitive rate to hire people.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I hear a second? Heard 2 seconds, Johnson and Gooch. So whichever one of those two guys.
Mr. Chairman, you referenced something that I believe a board member shared with you about the reason for the high fund balance of $2.5 million, that they didn't know if they were going to have to use that money if they were going to move for renovations. Well, first of all, that's a difficult explanation to accept because this fund balance has been accumulating over the course of years. That's number one. We've only recently talked about moving the Limeball Library out of downtown and moving it more out into the city where it could be more accessible without creating a homeless problem. But more importantly, it's the cities and the county that are responsible for the relocation. And I think that fund balance is for operations, is it, Michael? So that any renovation would not come out of that fund balance. That fund balance is for operation costs. So I think there may be a mistake in there, but I just wanted to make sure we understood that.
I'm not advocating one way or the other. I was just trying to pass on information that I'd gleaned. So
I say that only, Mr. Chairman, because I'm trying to make sure this committee has the facts. That's all. I'm not. These aren't disparaging remarks at all. So please forgive me if it came off that way. That's not the intent. The committee's getting ready to vote on something, and I want to make sure we have the information available to us.
hey, I appreciate that.
Thank you,
Mr. Irving.
Mr. Chairman, so is this operating funds or is this funds towards that could be used for capital as well?
We make a contribution to the Rutherford County Library System, and then they spend that how the library board votes generally it's for operating, paying the salaries and of their employees and things like that. All of the cities also make a contribution, but it's an operating expense for us, and then it goes to them and they spend it on their operating expenses.
And what's the rate at which it's been accumulating? Is it like 100,000 a year? Is it like 400,000 a year?
I glanced at their last 2 audits, and it varies. I didn't go much past their last 2 audits. They're audited by a local CPA firm, and so I think it varies. I'd have to go back and run trend analysis on their budget, but we haven't done that because they're audited separately from us.
I would not want to hamstring them if they're dependent on this and they've accumulated this additional amount over a period of years for some purpose. And I'm not clear, I don't know enough about the library system, I'll be candid. And so I'm trying to understand if this has been accumulated for some purpose along the lines of a renovation, along the lines of additional building. I'm reluctant, absent kind of a clear analysis of, the 350, for example, that Chairman Harris is proposing, or some other number. I'm just reluctant to cut something unless we know what we're cutting from, and then also, if they're going to potentially be relying on this, and we're 2 or 3 weeks or a couple months away from knowing, I'm kind of reluctant at this point to cut. The question, just a follow-up question for Commissioner Harris, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Could you give me a little more information about the 350 and how you came up with the 350 so that I can, and the other members of the committee who may not be as in the dark as I am, can understand where the 350 came from and what the bigger picture is, perhaps, with what it's going to be used for?
Well, first of all, that 2.5 million is for operating costs they have in refunds right now. In a reserve. So the 350, where I came up with that is, I am trying to take a $5,000 per job and increase the rate to make our competitive rate. For instance, we have 35 positions open in the jail. And if I put 10,000 towards that, it'd be 350,000. I'm throwing a number out there. Now, according to the comptroller, the maximum amount of money that we can cut them with the county is $530,000. So I'm not hitting them with the full amount that we could ask for, but I'm hitting them for $350,000 as a start. Now, Sonia's got to do a bunch of stuff for us to even, that thing but she's going to have a number to work with. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is give her a number to work with. This is not going to be devastating to them. This is not going to hurt them like you think. This is us taking money. They have got plenty in reserves, and we're not going to be hurting them at all. So, and they might say different, but I know, looking at everything, and I'll ask Michael if, do you feel that I'm overreaching with this 350?
I do feel like they have adequate reserves to cover this. I will add, the city and the county own the building. So if there's an issue with, like there was an issue a while back, I believe it was last year, with some stuff on the plaza in front of the building, and the city and county covered that maintenance cost per our agreement to cover the city plaza and the parking garage. So we cover all of those costs from the maintenance perspective and stuff like that.
So it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, that the operating side would be fine under the library budget, and there would be some incremental hit potentially to their fund balance, okay, and that there would be some amount, because if it's $10,000, that's really not, by the time you take out all the things you have to take out, there's not that much of a likely raise in there, probably, by the time you take out, potentially pensions and Social Security and taxes and everything else. So I'm trying to get, have you had a chance to, does $10,000 make a big difference in hiring new, or what was that, detention officers? I think, wasn't it detention officers?
I think you're correct. I mean, we can go back and ask Chief Spence or the sheriff are here. I think we had stated the number 40,000 came out, and Sonia corrected us, said it was around 51 starting salary. Am I correct? Sonia, or you can speak up if you'd like.
What did you say again?
He's asking about starting salaries out at the jail.
Well, I'm just asking, does the $10,000 incremental for, I believe this was detention, does that make a difference in, being able to hire or incentivizing people to come work for, Rutherford County? I'm trying to look at it from 2 or 3 different sides.
Well, let me interject one other thing. Under other business, we're going to ask Ms. Stevenson to cover her study, so it might be more appropriate to do it again then. But, I mean, you're welcome to get an answer from her now, but I just want to let you know that is coming up. I think Chairman Harris's aim is to find revenue that we could use to raise these, either the table or, these positions. I think that's where, Chairman Harris, you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's my take on this. And Chairman Harris is nodding yes if you want to answer that.
Well, I mean, Commissioner Irving, what is the alternative? Not do anything? I mean, 350,000 could go a long ways in helping us in some of these areas. No, we might not be able to fund every single thing, but we got 12 EMS openings. We got 31 or 35, I can't remember, Steve will have to come in there, 35 jail openings. And we're not saying that we're going to be the top county to come work for, but we got to be a little bit more competitive. Her job, our job and Sonia's job would be, how can we utilize these funds? So the alternative to is, I'm asking, and I'm kind of confused, is if we don't do anything, then we stay exactly where we are. This $350,000 will be, yes, I wish it was $950,000, but I am realistically looking at a $350,000 cut that is not going to be detrimental to the library system.
So you're basically, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're willing to make a small down payment or a down payment using the library funds, and you're certainly open to other possibilities using other funds as well, right?
Absolutely.
From the budget. Okay. All right. And I applaud your efforts to try to find the money for that.
Any other discussion on the library systems budget? Commissioner
Is there no
Pearson?
one here tonight representing the library?
There is, and if you'd like to speak, please come forward. I'll recognize you. I saw a couple of hands go up. I know a couple of the people, and I think they're intern or their new directors there.
While they're walking up, can I clarify a number?
Yeah, please do.
So your motion was to reduce from the mayor's request the 350, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that number would be 1,726,801 for the minutes.
Hey, welcome. Please state your name, your position with the library or association.
Hello, my name is Mindy Barrett. I am the interim director / branch manager for Linebaugh Public Library.
I'm Tim Bolin, treasurer of the Rutherford County Library System.
So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am glad Tim is here with me. This is my first little adventure into budget meetings or anything, as I've been the interim since February. My concern is that I think the number, the 2.2 million, it's a big number as far as our fund balance. From my understanding, half of that needs to remain in the account for if anything happens to close the library, God forbid. The other part of that balance is, and correct me, is specifically a fund balance in Linebaugh Library's budget. That's not pertaining to Smyrna, that's not pertaining to any of our other branches. Finally, if you look through what we request and if you see the expenditures, we have been trying to spend down the fund balance based on depending on that for building repairs and any maintenance. So Linebaugh Public Library, in this budget packet that you received, we have budgeted $5,000 for repairs and maintenance. That is very stressful. I spent $5,000 in repairs and maintenance when it flooded because of a busted pipe in winter. So that fund balance is there as a way and a means for us to make repairs to the building itself, not necessarily the plaza, but anything that has to do inside of our building, and not continue to increase that and ask for that every budget year. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
As the board is open to any discussions with the mayors of both the Rutherford County and the cities that if some of that does need to be used, we're not here to say, no, we're going to object to that. So we are open to that. We just would have liked to have had some discussions ahead of time to know, because that is funds that we have been using for maintenance. One of the repairs we have been putting off for about 3 or 4 years is recarpeting the building. That's about a $180,000 expenditure right there. So we're not opposed to utilizing some of that, but just remember that if that's a one-time hit for this year, operating costs are still going to come back on the next budget cycle where they're going to need something as well. Because I think last year, if you look at our audit, I believe our net position was about $758 in increase. The $2 million has accumulated over 25 years ago, although I'll say probably $1 million of that, and we'd have to look at the audits to say, but if off the top of my head, probably close to $1 million is probably been within the last 5 years, if you want to know actually where that's coming from. It's probably been built up there.
Tim, just for clarification for me, that 2 million, 2.2, close there, is what exactly can that be spent on? Is that just capital or repairs, or can be for salaries? What can you use that for?
It is, as far as my understanding on it, and of course we're in a unique position because our former director was so good, and it's a little bit hard for Mindy stepping in at this point, but it was pretty much unrestricted. We were trying to look at some of that we were going to have to do capital expenditures, whether that is for chillers, the HVAC equipment, when that has to get replaced. We've had some very, very large expenditures on some of that type of equipment too.
One reason I keep interjecting so many questions, I want to make it plain that there's nothing punitive about this. It's got nothing to do with the operations of the library. As a matter of fact, my kids grew up in that library over there, going to the summer camps and, reading, and the time there is something just about everybody in this county at some point, whether it's the regional system or whatever with Linebaugh, and it's been a wonderful system, and I wholeheartedly support it. However, I see the point here, and, we could use some help with some of these revenues. Anybody else on the committee? Ms. Piercy.
Where did this money accumulate from? Where did the money come from?
Each year, if we didn't totally spend it, for instance, the previous branch manager kept wanting to do the carpet, and we kept putting that off. For one reason is because we were under the impression by former administrations that there was discussions on relocating the library, and we knew we would have to put in some money if we were doing that, and so consequently we kind of kept holding back a little bit to do that.
But where did the money come from?
The money's going to come from primarily all from either Rutherford County, City of Murfreesboro, City of Smyrna, some grant money, but most of that is actually grant money has specific purposes and is spent for specific purposes. And that's why, now I'm speaking as an individual here, so I can't speak for the library board itself, but that's why I don't think it's unreasonable if we have to use some money for expenditures on this. Because the money does come from the county and the cities, so it's not unreasonable to think if they need to use some of that from a short term, I think that would be reasonable to have a discussion. I just think it would be nice if we could have that discussion so everybody's on board with it.
So your monies is accumulation of Murfreesboro, Rutherford County, and Smyrna?
That is correct.
You build up for your $2-point-something million you've got to build up?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Carr, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mindy, can you provide to the mayor's office and this committee your budget for the coming year and last year's budget so we can get an idea of what your annualized expenditures look like and what the year-to-year increase, because you asked for an increase of, I believe, about $150,000 or something like that. And so I have not seen a line ball library budget. And I think maybe it would be helpful to the mayor's office, and I think maybe some members of this committee would like to see that to kind of get some comparative analysis, because you asked for an increase, and then this is a tight budget year. But I want to give credence to Chairman Harris's remarks. These are competitive dollars, and we're not trying to be punitive in any way, but what we're trying to do is take the limited dollars that we have and put them to the best use for the county. And I think everybody up here wants to do that. And so if you could provide us some information so I and this committee could make a better informed decision, it would be helpful.
Of course, I can, how did you want me to get you that information? Just,
That increase in net position of $746, that was at the government-wide level and included the pension actuary numbers. So that wasn't the true fund net position, that was at the government-wide level. Mayor, their increase over last year requested increase was $73,000. I think you said 125, just to clarify. And I was going to pull the actual net position at the fund level was a little more than that on the true cash basis as far as increasing the unassigned or unrestricted fund balance. I'm looking at the audit now from there. But that 746 that you referenced was right on point. That did include the sorry, I was looking for the audit. That did include the net pension from the actuary, assuming the non-operating and non-cash liabilities there, just for the record.
One thing I want to point out, we do have a motion and a second on the floor, and we can have more discussion as we're going, but what I want to point out, regardless of how this motion falls out, we can review this after he's got the information that he's requested. So I don't want you to think that whatever we do tonight is, the end all. That is subject to change, and of course it could change up to the 24th of June.
I did find the number I was looking for. The revenue over expenditures last year at the fund level, which is what their operating portion was, $113,845.
Is there any other discussion from the committee? We do have a motion and a second on the floor.
I'd just be interested to know what their view of the impact of taking $350,000 from the budget would be. And maybe if there's not one, okay. If there is, I'd like to know now to simplify life down the road.
You're going to get two different answers. I don't think it would be a detriment. I think it's something that, while it's not what probably the librarian's going to see, and I'm going to get stabbed in the back on the way out, but I only have one more meeting anyway. It's not going to be a detriment to the library. So my only cautionary is that next year, when somebody else is presenting this, that if there is a larger increase in request, that you would just remember that we did take some fund balance at this point.
I have two concerns. The first is from the standpoint of the branch manager at Linebaugh and knowing what I am writing checks for maintenance and knowing how quickly that money can be spent. My main concern is that the budget that we submitted has $5,000 requested for maintenance and repairs, and that was with the understanding or the comfort in knowing that we did have the fund balance if something really bad did happen. That's the first concern that I have. The second concern is, and this is strictly from, I don't have much experience, but what will happen to the maintenance of effort and if we lose the benefits of any state benefits that we've been getting through our collection.
Mr. Irvin, did that answer your question? Any other?
Reread the motion.
My
Mark,
motion
have you
is to change the mayor's recommended budget from $2,076,801 to $1,726,801.
Michael, could you repeat that number for me? 1 million what?
$1,726,801.
So the motion is to amend the mayor's budget and then make that our budget request $1,726,801. So that is the motion that we're fixing to consider. Any other discussion? Commissioner Pearson.
I have a question for the mayor. How did you come up with their budget if you haven't seen a budget from them?
How did I come up with that reduction? I mean, they're maintaining that because I saw their request. And I knew when talking to the city mayors what their fund balance was. And they had what I consider to be an extraordinarily large fund balance, and it was based on that information.
So they submitted a request without a budget?
I'm sorry?
So they submitted a request without a budget?
I have not seen a budget. No, sir. I'm sorry. Is it fine? Okay. I've just been told their budget's in the finance office, so I'll be getting that from the finance director.
Any other discussion before we call roll? Hearing none, call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Shrino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. And as we stated, the mayor will be reviewing this. If any of the commissioners at any time during our process, we will have days that we will be reviewing specific line items, and you'll be welcome to bring this up. Okay, moving to the next item, which is the tourism budget.
So this item includes several things. I'm going to read the smaller items first, and then I'll save the larger item till last. This includes funding for the Heritage Center, Main Street, Oaklands Association, Sam Davis Home, the Children's Museum Corporation, which is the Discovery Center that Commissioner Harris talked about earlier, the Center for the Arts. And this also includes the portion of hotel motel tax that goes to the Chamber of Commerce, and that currently right now is 15% of hotel motel tax goes to the Chamber of Commerce. And then Commissioner Irvin, you asked me this question last year, how that was set. That is set by resolution.
Talking about hotel motel tax.
The 15%, I believe last year you'd asked me a question about this particular one, how that was set. We have done some research, and I've also talked to the county attorney. That is set by resolution.
How old is that resolution?
I don't know how old Mark, do you remember how old that resolution was that we found? It's in the office. I'd have to go look at it.
I want to say it's about 6 to 8 years old. I remember us reviewing that.
Yeah, it's when we changed our hotel motel tax, we changed that resolution at the same time. I don't remember what it was, though.
I'd have to go pull it, but it's several years.
Is there a statutory component to that, too? It's kind of a choice between...
We are grandfathered in. We're grandfathered into our resolution.
So we have more flexibility if we chose to exercise it.
That is my understanding, yes.
Thank you.
To give you a little history lesson, Commissioner Bob P. Actually brought up the hotel motel tax. Now, I can't tell you how many years ago that was, but close to 50. At that time, he was trying to keep from raising property taxes and looking for alternative taxes for the county's coffers. And the hotel motel tax was meant by him to go into the county's budget. Of course, some of it does, but there's a percentage that does go to the municipalities. And that is, my understanding, subject to change by the full commission. And Michael, you might straighten me out on that.
This one is, I believe we do have an agreement with the city for the 5% to the Greenway. But this one is by, I believe you could change it by resolution. I'd have to look and see if we have a signed agreement with the city on the other. So currently we give 15% of hotel motel tax to the chamber, and we give 5% to the city for the Greenway.
Okay, any questions about any of the other line items in that group? Like they're mostly the same. I see a slight decrease in one of them. But any discussion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, could we also get a copy of the chamber's budget?
I think we can send one out. We can.
Could we?
You want a
Okay.
paper copy or me email it to everybody?
You can email it.
I'd like one also, please.
Well, we just send that to across the board. We can send that to 21 commissioners, just as easy as send it to 2, so that way everybody's informed. Any other questions about the mayor's recommendation for contributions here? Hearing none.
I'm sorry, I do have one. I apologize. Now, are we talking about, is the Children of Museum Corp. Part of this, what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. I am wanting to, most of this $20,000 has a lot to do with security of the building and the employees, and that cost has went up. And I'm wanting to see if this committee would increase this from $20,000 to $22,500. And that's based on the contract going up.
Are you
That's where I'm
making-
trying to, that's my justification of that.
Are you making that into a form of a motion?
I am.
Do I hear a second? $500 more, I believe.
2,500.
Oh, 2,500 more. Well, I'll wait to whether I hear a second. We'll give it another second or two for a second or not. Hearing none, motion fails for lack of a second. One thing I do want to mention, they had an incident last year where there was a attempted carjacking and 2 people ran into the museum while it was full of children. And that's why we beefed up security there. The reason I know so much about it is one of my grandchildren was in that facility when that happened. They, of course, provide a place for children throughout the county and the municipalities. Anyway, I think that's where Chairman Harris is coming from. Any further discussion on this?
Mr. Chairman, a quick question. Is that a contract, a new contract amount? Or is
No,
that
it's
just a requested increase for additional security? I was trying to be sure.
Yes, to increase additional security. Discovery Center.
Any further discussion?
Can I make a motion to do it for $1,000?
Yes, sir, you can.
Well, I'll ask for $1,000 then. Anything I can do to help Discovery Center's security.
Okay, he has a motion to increase the 20,000 to 21,000. Do I hear a second? Second. Okay, I have a second. Any discussion on this motion?
Can I amend his amount?
Sure.
Yes, sir, you can make an amendment to the motion.
I'm gonna make the amendment to the motion to put the 1,500 back with it to make it a total of 25.
Okay, so the,
Whoa.
What?
25?
what he's doing,
22.5.
he's actually making this back to the
22.5.
original motion of 2250. He's adding 1,500 to the amount.
I'll
So it would have been a
I'll
tou-
second it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you've got a second on the amendment. Let me ask you guys something. Can we withdraw all that and go back to the original motion and make this a little easier?
With me?
Okay, so they've withdrawn their motion. Now, I'll accept a new motion for the amount. Commissioner Piercy, if you want to give that.
I make the motion to, how much did he say? 2,500.
Mark, you got that number down? And I've got a second, I assume.
I think so.
I've got a second. Any further discussion on this
The
amount?
number is 22.5? Is that what it is? Okay.
Okay. Mayor?
Mr. Chairman?
Just a moment. I've recognized the mayor.
I'm not opposed to the motion, but the director didn't request it, so, and I'm sure it's money well spent, but they didn't request it, so that's why, I understand, and I meet with them, and they do a great work. It's the Discovery Center, isn't it, Michael? Yeah, so they do a good work, and I was unaware of the security issue, but just for the committee's benefit, we gave them what they requested, so.
No, nothing on you, Mayor. This is me this is nothing on you. This is me having a conversation with Chairman, and that's one of the things. They were not requesting anything. I am offering additional help on security.
Commissioner Johnson.
Clarify this.
The motion, Mark, if you would, read that back to us, please.
Motion is to increase the tourism line by $2,500, and it's to go to the Children's Museum Corporation of Rutherford County.
Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinial?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, we did that the hard way, didn't we, guys?
Extremely.
Sure, I'm on the right. I've got these named different on my page and where I'm looking at contribution. Destination Rutherford, that's the one we're ready for now, is and the Economic Development Council. Okay, Michael, I guess you'll take that.
So this category has two things. One is $135,000 for Destination Rutherford, and the other is $96,500 for the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development. And those are the exact same as the last 2 years.
I think this commission's very aware of Destination Rutherford. Any questions about the proposed budget? Hearing no questions, we will accept the mayor's recommendation of $135,000 and move to the next, which is emergency management. Welcome.
Chairman, committee, Chris Clark, Public Safety Director. We gladly accept the mayor's recommendation for our fiscal year budget.
I'm gonna have to flip some pages for a second here, guys. Michael, you got that under disaster relief?
Yes.
Anything jump out, Director, to you of any changes that are large?
We did request one telecommunicator for our dispatch center, and we also asked for one reclassification.
And your reclassification is for what?
Admin assistant.
Dispatch system, enlighten me, is that your personal system within just EMS, or is that also the same dispatch? Does fire, EMS and EMA? I'm sorry, I said EMS instead of EMA.
Yes, sir. So our communication is, their responsibility is EMS, fire, and emergency management, along with other responsibilities.
I just wanted to make sure it was all out of the same.
Correct.
Chris, how many do you know how many openings we have in your department with all the departments together?
As far as emergency management, we have one opening here just recently in the last couple of weeks. A gentleman is leaving our communication center and going to North Carolina he just got married, and I think that's where they're going to relocate.
So EMS, fire department, all that's just one opening? I mean, one?
No, sir, I'm not speaking for
Okay.
EMS nor fire.
Any questions for the director? You need more time to look over this. I'm not trying to rush anybody. Contract with other agencies went down a lot. What was the big reduction there, Chris? 312. Contract with private agencies, sorry.
Yes, sir. One of the things that we have decreased was, this year was, we were looking for a UPS for our communication center. That has been there for 20-something years, and it's needing to be replaced. That's one of the items there.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Any recommendations for change?
Just a question. What caused the amended budget to spike so much compared to... Can I finish my question?
Sorry.
Mr. Smith? I forgot my question. No, okay, what caused the amended budget to spike so much over the original budget? Question mark.
Who's your question addressed to, Mr. Chairman?
The Honorable Mr. Smith.
If you remember, we amended due to the Motorola payment. I believe we had an executive session back several months ago, back in the fall, but that was due to the Motorola contract payments, having to make 2 payments in this one fiscal year.
Any other questions? Any recommendations to change? Hearing none, we're going to accept the mayor's recommendation and move along.
Thank you.
Next is the highway fund. Now, this is a budget that the mayor does not look at. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Greg Brooks. I'm the road superintendent, and this is Miss Mary Hickerson. She's my department coordinator. I think I have what you are seeing in front of me as well. And what we're asking for this year is, and please understand that this was approved by the road board reviewed and approved by the road board unanimously back in April at our April meeting. but we're asking for $16,933,301, and that's what our expected revenues are, and our expected expenditures are $16,592,792, for a positive difference of $340,509.
Greg, two things.
Okay.
One, love the shirt.
Yeah, thank you.
Second, I've been a commissioner for going on 6 years, and you've been solid, and I've never told you good job, so I wanted to tell you, Mary, great job on what y'all do in the budget and the road board.
Well, I appreciate that. We do try.
Mr. Chairman,
You're recognized.
this passed unanimously in the road board, and this equates to a 14.96% decrease from last year's budget. And in no way does it affect the efficiency and of the highway department that has proven to be, we've got some of the best roads in the state of Tennessee.
By the way, and I didn't mention this, I did say this was not recommended by the mayor, so I will need a motion up or down or any changes on this budget.
Also, this is not my first rodeo. I've been out there 24 years.
Any further discussion on the highway fund budget?
Mary, did we talk to Reba? Did we need to make an amendment to this? Or okay, all right. I just want to make sure.
Got back. Sorry about that, Mark.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the highway budget. Any discussion?
I just got a quick question. Who inspects our bridges? Is it our department or is it outside?
TDOT inspects all of our bridges that are over 20 feet, 20 feet or over in length, semi-annually.
Okay, are there any concerns?
There's always concerns when you have that much inventory. We currently have 168 bridges that they inspect, and they put them on different lists based on their, their findings. And so we're trying to work through some of that right now. We have state aid bridge money, just like we have state aid road money. And in order for us to use that state aid bridge money, we have to follow their list, if you will. So list 1, list 2, list 3 bridges. So we get a report, I get a report, and then we work off of that report. We currently have two, not to interrupt, but we currently have two smaller bridges that we are going to try to do in-house with our own money. And then we have a couple of larger bridges that TDOT is going to do basically for us. So that will give us an opportunity to do a larger bridge, rehabilitation on a larger bridge with our state aid bridge money.
And just to echo Commissioner Harris, y'all do an awesome job in not just the work, but how you keep your books and balancing and conservative, and we just appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. I have some really good help.
Yeah, I see good help.
I kind of want to echo what these guys are saying, and then I recognize Commissioner Johnson. Just this last week, the flooding that we had in my area, I've seen flooding that I haven't seen in my lifetime before, because of the quickness of it. But I think the reaction to the road board was excellent. I couldn't ask for, better coverage there, but I wanted to thank you especially for that. Commissioner Johnson, you're recognized.
When you're talking about 983.647 miles of roads, that's a pretty good job.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make sure I asked it in one other budget, but a couple of months ago, we approved a salary increase from an internal move within the department. I just wanted to make sure that that salary increase or the adjustment in rates this coming year is on top of that salary increase.
That's,
Is that correct, Michael?
that is correct.
So what we gave them last year, they're still going to get their bump again this year on top of that. Just want to make sure.
I want to clarify something. They're not on the county pay table, so they set their own salaries. But if you're asking the mid-year bump, is that included in what you see? The answer is yes. And then I think they still evaluate salaries yearly out there or semi-annually out there at the road board. But what they did pass few months ago here is in what you have in front of you now.
Correct.
Wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
One more comment. Need to keep in mind that less than a penny of the property tax rate goes to the upkeep of the highway department.
To Public Works, yes, sir.
Less than a penny. That is because the Public Works, which this county commission established that department.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any further discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Strino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up is the Health Department. Brian here, or we got somebody else going to cover
Thank you,
that
Mr.
for us?
Chairman, for your patience.
Oh, not at all. You've got something to crow about. Commissioner Johnson's a longtime road board member also, and so he's has his pulse on the road work here in this county. Michael, we got somebody to cover the health department. Do we need to hold up on that?
I don't see anybody here. I mean, I can cover it. They didn't, as far as I know, they have not asked for any increase other than the regular salary increases that were raised in the table.
What is the will of the committee? You want to look at this tonight? If I don't hear a negative, we're going to go ahead and have Michael present this for us. Please do.
I will say, if I can, Mr. Chairman,
Recognize.
when we met with Brian Gumby and his assistant, they did agree with the mayor's proposal. So that was the last conversation we had, and I haven't heard anything since. And Michael was there.
Now, the 55-110 is the local, that's our portion that we fund that you're looking at. And then as we go down through here, you'll see the state's portion. But that increase is a $27,000, a little over $27,000 increase over last year.
Any questions for the finance director on the health department's budget, which is an increase of $27,000? I assume most of that's got to do with raises.
It is all raises. It is all due to salaries.
So basically a flat budget. Any further discussion on the health department budget? Hearing none, we're going to accept the mayor's recommendation and move to dental health program. And same thing there.
There is no increase in that over the last year.
So same as the amended budget from last year. Any questions from the committee on the dental health program budget? Hearing no changes recommended, we're going to accept the mayor's proposal and move to other local health.
The other local health is the portion that we get state funding for. And so it also went up, but it went up mainly due to salaries. There was a $500 increase to supplies and materials, and liability insurance went up $100 from the amended budget, but that is the portion that we submit reimbursement to the state of Tennessee for.
So how much actual money coming from the county coffers are we talking about, Michael?
So in years past, none. However, there has been a slight change going into next year, and that is if our raises exceed the state raises, we could be on the hook for a portion of that. However, every year we do not spend all of the state's budget that you see in front of you because of open positions and things like that. So it is very likely there will be nothing coming out of the county coffers for this. If some did, it would be a very small portion due to if the state decided to give a 4% raise and we gave 5 or something like that, we may be on the hook for that 1% or something. But that would be if we spent everything in their budget and it was all maxed out. And we did meet with some officials from the state of Tennessee, and that is my understanding. I think Sonia's shaking her head yes as well. So as of right now, we don't plan for anything to come out of the county's coffers, but it could be a very small portion could. In that rare event that we spend everything in this budget, which we very rarely, or we don't do that often. Last year the budget was 3.1 million and we spent 2.8, so.
Any other questions for Michael on the other local health line items? Hearing no requests for change, we will accept the mayor's recommendation and move to recreation. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening. I'm Joseph Reed. I'm the County Recreation Director. This is John Marshall, the Chairman of the Conservation Board, and we gladly accept the Mayor's proposal.
Any major changes in there besides a bit of salary?
No, sir.
Questions for the director or Mr. Marshall? Chairman Gooch.
On 399 other contracted services, what is that?
I'm going to let Mr. Marshall speak because that's not one of my line items.
That is where the board votes on to give money to some of the local clubs, whether that's Las Casas, Blackman, or the Kittrell communities where they've done light poles in the past or things like that. But they vote on that every year, the board does. And I want to add one other thing. We talked about this a minute ago, but line 316 contributions, that is the portion where the 5% hotel motel tax, that is also not something, that's something the finance office does. That's not something that they do. But that's line 316, and then 399 is where the board divvies out the money to the various clubs for renovations and projects.
You know, the only question I've ever had about this board is why it's called the Conservation Board instead of the Recreation Board. Either one of you got an answer for that?
Statute.
Probably so.
TCA, yeah, they.
TCA, there you go.
Question.
You recognize Commissioner Piercy.
It's the Park and Fair Board, that's what we're discussing now. Do the same people manage the park that manages the fairs? My reasoning, we haven't had a county fair here in many years, and why do we still call it the Fair Board? Unless we have other kind of fairs.
If you're looking at the account number, that chart of account number is set by the State Comptroller's Office. So when you're seeing the 56,700 parks and fair boards, that is the number they require us to use. So I'm not sure why they still call it a Parks and Fair Board for us.
But we don't have anything to do with the fair.
We don't have a fair.
That's right.
Thank you.
Any further discussion from the committee? Any questions? I'll just make one other comment. These guys do an excellent job for our county, our communities, and the children of this county. They're carrying on a tradition that Ben Kate started, and I'm very proud of all of them. But any recommended changes? Hearing none, we're going to accept the mayor's budget and add this to our approved column.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is the agricultural extension budget. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Misty Lane Watkins, and I'm here to represent Anthony Tuggle. And we accept the mayor's recommendation, although he was a little upset that we did not get the work truck. But we do accept it.
Well, thank you, Ms. Watkins, but you didn't, we're going to get you a truck. It's just not going to be a brand-new truck.
He did tell me that, yes. So he was expecting to get a new truck and another truck. He said the reason why is because we use it for a lot of demonstration purposes and also to haul equipment. And Farm Bureau donated over $75,000 to us in equipment within the past year, and so we use it for that as well. But he said to accept the budget. He was okay with that, yes. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
You recognize Commissioner Serino.
You know, the agriculture have done a good job, and so we serve on the board on that position.
Commissioner Serino is on the Agriculture Committee, one of our representatives. Who is the other one? Trying to think. I know at one time we had all four Budget Committee members on the Ag Board, but not this year. We at least got one.
We have Commissioner Reed and Commissioner Johnson too.
Okay, Anthony Johnson.
Beverly.
Any other discussion on the agriculture budget? And having heard her say that they accept the mayor's budget, we will also accept it, since I hear no changes, and add that to our approved column. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is soil conservation. Welcome. Please introduce both of yourselves.
I'm Anthony Scales from the Soil Conservation District. I'm co-chairman, and this is Delia Goodman, the secretary of the Conservation District. And we accept the mayor's proposal, and we're doing good for the crops. All the young people are very interested in the crop program we have. So we accept the mayor's proposal.
Crop program is something we developed it here with your help. About, what, 20 years ago? Maybe?
20 years, at least 20 years.
And CROP stands for Conservation Resources Outreach Program. And if you'll look for our little signs around, they're white with green. And as people are becoming more and more familiar with it, we're getting more and more requests for the money, and we're very proud of what we've been able to do with the money that you all give us.
They do a lot of outreach to our schools. They have a poster program that they do. If you hadn't ever went to, I'm sure we all get the invitation, but if you've never went to their banquet over there in their awards program, I would suggest you doing that.
Proud that we had Farmer of the Year for the state last year, and that was Ernie Brown. And we had the state winner for another category. That was in Spiritus group. They do gardens, started with the church. They've got in other counties too. They've got like 167 gardens in areas that may be a little depressed economically. And Janet Arnick is in charge of that. She does a wonderful job. So,
Well, again, these guys do an excellent job, and they do a lot of outreach for agriculture here in this county. And I'm awful proud to be associated somewhat with both of these guys. But anyway, any questions for these or any recommendations for change on the budget for soil conservation? Hearing none, the budget is accepted as proposed by the mayor. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Next is garage. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman. I'm Brian Davenport with the Vehicle Maintenance Department, the director. And I just wanted to say that I approve I accept the mayor's our recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You may.
So this is Brian's first time to present the budget. Brian is the new director for the garage, so I would implore the committee to be nice to Brian. He's doing an outstanding job for the garage on limited resources. So thank you, Brian, for what you do, taking care of our vehicles. You do a good job.
Brian, you've asked for one employee, is that correct? And I think maybe some tools, which are well needed. This guy's been taking care of our vehicles, but sometimes the line gets a little long waiting on them. But
So just so the committee knows, this is the first additional employee they've asked for. Sonia, what, 20 years? So this is quite honestly long overdue and well needed. And I think, what's the tool, Brian? I think you need a diagnostic tool? Thank you.
any questions for Brian? Request for changes to the mayor's proposed budget.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask one question, what's the travel for?
Okay, so the travel's for, we have to travel for some of our training. Our training requires EVT, specifically for the ambulances, emergency vehicle training. So we have to have the training on that part.
Any further questions? Hearing none, no changes offered, we will accept the mayor's proposal and move to the next item.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Brian. Good job, by the way. We're calling on at this time, the trustee, Mr. Beatty. This is the guy. But he's not used to having to wait.
I'm Ted Beatty. I'm the trustee, and I accept the mayor's recommendation.
Have you got enough people to do all the things you've been doing for us? I know with the added people that are audited every year that are asking for a tax freeze, that's got to be burdensome. Are we doing okay there?
We are. Thank you for asking. I appreciate my staff. They're extremely dedicated. In fact, I had one young lady, as y'all know, the end of February is a rough time, and she came to work about as sick as anybody I've ever seen come to work, because she just knew we needed her. And I just appreciate my staff. They, even when they're sick, they show up and help us get done. So what we've worked to do is we're already taking applications for tax freeze. We've got those appointments that have already started. We've worked with the assessor's office to get last year's into their files, and we've started, and we're going to use the summer, which we have really fully, to try to get the individuals that we know were above the relief amount and under the $60,000, which is the new tax freeze. And so we're just trying to utilize, you know, the slower summertime. And so we've not asked for a new position. We think we can make it. We're just trying to organize and do better. We've worked with the state to try to make things, and they're working with us to make things a little more streamlined. And we're going to try to do it with the staff that we have. If we get into this and just have trouble next year, I may have to come and say, Uncle, we got to have a little help. But we believe that we believe we do it. We're going to get it done, and we believe we can do it efficiently and get everything done that we need to.
Any questions from the committee? Hearing none, we're going to accept the mayor's proposed budget for the trustee's office and add that to our approved column. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all.
Next is alcohol and drug programs. Michael, you're going to cover this one?
This is our this is our category for the opioid funds. This will be amended based on what the commission approved last week, and the opioid board is still taking changes and applications for next year through the month of June. So this category will increase. However, we do receive opioid funding, have received opioid funding this year that we will spend next fiscal year that will cover that. That's all I have for this category.
Chairman Harris, you want to say anything about the opioid committee to pass on?
Concerning
Well, basically, to follow up on what Michael was talking about, we will be making some changes as the opioid board looks at proposals for the coming year. We've approved some, and we're trying to get them in earlier. But
one of the things that we don't do any recurring budget, so everybody has to reapply every year. So it's right in the infant stage, but we had contracted with Middle Tennessee State University to vet everything that we do, and they are right now giving us recommendations on helping anybody that has been with us before. We're tracking how they spent the money, and we're looking at this real heavy, so we want to make sure that whatever funds Rutherford County gives, that it's going to what we want it to go to and not cost that is not related to the rehabilitation and awareness of the epidemic. Is that good?
I think so. But basically, this would be subject to change, right up until the end of, the next opioid board meeting, which is what, next Wednesday?
And there were some changes that were approved last Thursday at the county commission that will increase this line already. But it's easier to make all those changes at once when we present the budget to y'all for publication.
Do I hear any recommended changes to the alcohol and drug programs? Hearing none, we'll accept the budget as proposed. Next is the sanitation and waste removal. Mayor Carr, being a farmer, you know about this one.
I would know about it.
Dead stock contract.
I'm sorry?
Dead stock contract.
Yeah, that's what it is, isn't it? Who did we sign that up with?
Same people as last year. This category is for our dead stock contract. It's the same amount as last year with the same organization.
Any questions on basically the dead stock removal?
Large animal, by the way, not roadkill.
Right. Hearing no changes or recommendations, we'll accept the mayor's proposed sanitation and waste removal budget and move to other public health and welfare. Michael, you want to cover this one, or the mayor going to pick that up as medical?
I can take that one. So this category is mainly for our autopsies, are paid out of this line item.
That's a flat budget increase. last year?
The explanation for that would be they went up, as you may recall, from $2,300 January 1. No, prior to January 1, it's $2,300. It's now $2,500 an autopsy. As you know, our autopsies are done by Forensic Medical in Nashville, and we're doing approximately 350 autopsies a year.
Any questions for the mayor on this proposed budget?
This is on sanitation and waste removal.
Other public health and welfare.
I'm sorry.
No, that was the prior one, sorry. Any recommended changes? Hearing none, we're going to accept the mayor's proposed budget for other public health and welfare, which is covering the autopsies. We'll add that to our approved column and go to employee benefits. Michael.
So this category has 4 things in it. The $75,000 is our cushion for medical insurance rates. So as people change throughout the year and have qualifying events for the family coverage or something like that, or we hire somebody on that has family coverage and the person that left employment was single coverage, this is where we pull from for that every year. The next thing in there we have is unemployment compensation, so that's our pool as well. So at the end of the year, the end of the year budget amendment, we'll move that to the applicable category for unemployment compensation. Our other fringe benefits is for our retiree health insurance. That's where we pay that out of. The county's portion comes out of there. And then our workers' comp is our premium we pay over for ourselves into our workers' comp insurance fund.
Minimal changes there. Any questions for Michael on the employee benefits budget? Hearing none, we'll also accept the mayor's recommendations and move that column. Next is miscellaneous.
So in this category, we have a gasoline pooled account, and that's for usually at the end of the year, we'll have a department that runs over on fuel costs or something like that. And so we pull from there as we have in past years. We generally do that towards the end of the year if needed. The next is our judgments line, and that is how we fund or help fund our self-insurance for our property and casualty fund 263. Then the next line is the trustees commission. And then the bottom line is a new line. It's $100,000. And as we were making the budget, looking at revenues, every year we have a lot of matching grants. And so throughout the year, we inevitably spend anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 on grant matches that could pop up throughout the year. And so as we were making the budget balanced and we had some revised revenue estimates that came in after we had already finished the expenditure portion of the version, we set that aside for matching grants throughout the year as we have small matching grants that come up. Correct. We normally take those matching grants out of fund balance. And so we had, like I said, some revenue estimates. We revised some of those after the expenses were done. We had some revenue coming a little bit better, and so we put that there as far as the hope to not take out of fund balance like we normally do.
Personally think that's prudent, and if push came to shove, we could still look at it. Any questions from the committee on the miscellaneous budget? Hearing none, we're going to accept the mayor's recommendation for the miscellaneous budget. And that moves us to the Industrial Economic Development Fund. Michael, you going to cover that one also?
This fund is what the Smyrna Rutherford County Airport Authority pays their bond payment into us, and then we transfer that money into our debt service fund to cover the actual bond payment that we make on their behalf. You'll notice under tab 1, the very first page, it shows a deficit, but we make an adjustment for the principal amount of the debt paid. Since that's a balance sheet item and not an income statement item, we have a note or bond receivable there. And so that adjustment for $561,250 is the adjustment for the principal amount paid on the debt. And if you remember, we talked a little bit about this at budget last month when we saw their budget, the Smyrna Rutherford County Airport Authority's budget last month.
Just a quick question, and you may not know the answer to this, is, the proposed move of is it the Air National Guard that's looking at coming to Smyrna? I forget who.
I'm sorry, they are planning on, there's a potential for them to relocate out of B&A down to Smyrna, which would be significant for the county.
And I agree. I'm just wondering if that's going to affect us any this year, or would it?
This fund strictly only covers the debt that the portion they pay over to us, where we receipt that in, and then we transfer that money to our Fund 151 Debt Service Fund.
Thank you for clarifying that for me. Thank you. Any questions on the Industrial Economic Development Fund? Basically, it's a loan. So, hearing none, we will accept the mayor's proposal on the Industrial Economic Development Fund, add that to our approved column. And we're moving now to other business. And we're going to invite Ms. Stevenson to come talk to us. Do I see a raise of hands? Anybody want to take a short break, or you want to go ahead? We're going to take a short break. Sonia, I'll give you a moment to get ready. We're going to look under other business, and Ms. Stevenson has got a report for her. And I've asked her to set at the desk where she's got this, where she can read it and hold a mic for us at the same time. Sonia?
Thank you. I do want to touch on one point when y'all were looking over this last, I think it may have been in the miscellaneous of the budget items. I do want to say under the unemployment, it shows no cost for last year. And I don't know if this board knows it or not, but you're shaking your head no, Mark.
Yeah, that money, that money got moved out, yeah.
Well, either way, the HR department fights all of our unemployment claims, and we have been pretty successful over the years in being able to win those claims on the county's behalf. So anyways, even if it's not zero, it's better than it would have been if we hadn't been fighting them. We'll just say that. So just Michael and I have worked, we started working in November, December on budget stuff, and one of the things that the HR department does is we bring in the pay plans and also what other entities are planning to do in their next year's budget, and we utilize or use or compare to the governmental entities that this body has approved in the past. And I may not remember all of them, but like Montgomery County, Clarksville. We also look at Smyrna, Laverne, Murfreesboro, because they're here in our county. We look at the city of Franklin, Williamson County, Metro Nashville. I'm trying to think, Chattanooga, Hamilton County, I think Sumner County, Hendersonville, Wilson County, City of Lebanon. There's several that we look at across Middle Tennessee. They're either connected to us in some way, or has historically been somebody that's been a competitor for employees with us, and that's what we've used for the analysis.
Sonia, excuse me, do you also add the state, or is that?
No, the state's not included. But on behalf of the sheriff's office, one of the entities that they lose to is the Tennessee Highway Patrol, and they also lose to CCA, Corrections Corporation of America, which is privately owned of sorts. So we don't have access to CCA's salary plan. Tennessee Highway Patrol post it, and they always give it entry level, but it's considerably more than what we pay at the county for our patrol officers. So that is one entity that I guess would be a comparison to the sheriff's office, or would be somebody who they would lose to. But no, overall we don't look at the state of Tennessee overall for all of our positions.
But basically, these entities that she's looking at is something we've directed you to look at. Is that
Yes,
correct?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So, having made that point, that's something we can modify if this committee and the full commission approve doing that.
Yes, and if So for our other departments, and I'll call them administrative type departments, my department and insurance, finance, some of those administrative positions, you know, we look at what the other counties do. And I will tell you in this survey from an administrative standpoint, the organization that we use also looks at what the private industry would pay for administrative type positions to kind of give us a guide. You know, are we comparable to what an accounting person would be? Are we comparable to what, you know, a clerk would be, those type things, because some of the other counties may not have those same positions, and so they let us know where we fall in line as that as well, because there's not, you know, anything to as many to compare to for that. The other thing that I do is, and back to your point, if our public safety departments, primarily our sheriff's office and our ambulance service, you know, have other entities. I know that the ambulance service has mentioned before Robertson County as being somebody that they lose individuals to. You know, I've not been directed to use them in the analysis, but if this body wanted them used in the analysis in the future, obviously we could, but it's not included in this current data. So I just want to say that if that's something that you want to entertain later on. The other thing that I do is there's a group that I meet with. It's called the 20-mile group, and it's all the HR directors for the cities and counties within a 20-mile radius of Rutherford County. And we meet once a quarter. We just talk about operations, things that we're struggling with, things that we try to improve, and it's been a really good experience. And so I've also been able to get a gauge of what they're hoping to do. Obviously, everybody's in their budget process, and so nobody's, you know, really knows what their board is going to approve, but I just know what they're going to ask for. So if, for example, if the city of Murfreesboro was, you know, already ahead of us in pay, I would know what they were looking to do and across the board as far as a cost of living increase or a table lift. So we've got that information as well. And when we put the averages together for, or receive the data for the averages, we have a way to put in here how we want to increase. So we initially thought about the 3.25% lift to the table. And with that, I can plug that in and tell you how many positions this would affect, and does that get us in the range of where we need to be. Historically, we have tried to make sure that if there's any positions that are underpaid under a certain amount, that we try to make sure that we adjust those. I will tell you during the process we have, let me get my number here. In looking at the positions, we have done 33 reclassifications to titles only. Those are not people, those are positions. So a patrol officer is a reclassifications, and there's, you know, 100 or more patrol officers in that classification. Detention officers, that's a classification. They're, you know, you'll have correctional work center, juvenile detention in the jail. So what it's telling us is when we did the reclassifications already in the budget that's presented, that affected 218 employees already. So we had 115 employees with County General that we reclassified and had the 3.25% lift to readjust them. And we had 163 at the Sheriff's Office to readjust their positions. So we reclassified in addition to lifting the table for those positions. So that's one of the things that we have already looked at and done. When I look at the adjustments to the table, this body had mentioned several different things, and Michael and I could not get, one of the recommendations was to look at the experience credit. At this late in the game, I was only able to get the Sheriff's Office done based on that request, and in order for us to do that, Michael and I both would have to touch every single employee in the county, and I have to go through every single personnel file to find out their prior history that was more than 5 years, because that's all we were capturing. So that is something that we would like to consider in the future, but as opposed to this year, just because I don't know that physically we can get that done in a timely manner. In order for him to print the budget, what did you say, Michael? It'd have to be ready by when?
30th at least.
Okay. So when I did the sheriff's office, just to let you know where that landed us, just to do the sheriff's office, it was going to be, and this was quickly, I'd want to go back and look at it, it was going to cost an additional $334,227, and that's only the salary. That's not Michael's part where it comes in with taxes and the pension and all those type things, and that's a additional percentage on top of that. So to take them from 5 years to 10 years experience credit, that would be just the base cost of the salary and not all the other taxes. So that's not even looking at the other departments. So we would like to put that to next year just because I don't think we can physically get it done in time for this process. And that is something that we do want to do because we do think that that will be something that would be meaningful, especially to our public safety departments. If the sheriff's office could hire in somebody with 10 years experience credit, they're more likely to get somebody that would come in and stay.
Do I have a question, sir? Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? So you're saying that you're wanting to hold off until next year? So Michael, how would that work if we find funding for these programs and for these jobs and we're wanting to hold off till next year? How do we do that with the money that we have in this budget? Because we'll have to do it all over again, will we?
I don't think Sonia's gotten to like her conclusion yet as far as, I think there are some options for this year that we're currently in. I think we're just saying that one particular option, while we think it's a good option, I don't know that we have enough physical hours in the day to get that option done. I do feel like there are some options for next year's budget, going into next year's budget. I just don't know that that's one of them.
So I spoke too quick. I apologize.
That's okay. That's okay. So another thing that we looked at doing that we felt like would help the departments is we've raised the county's minimum wage. We had several positions within the county that were making less than $10 an hour. There were some that were making $8 an hour, some that was 10. So we have reclassified some of those positions that we talked to take that up to a $16 per hour as a starting wage. And it's important to know that whenever we reclassify a position, we have to make sure that there is a division between the other pay grades. And I don't want to get too far in the weeds because it gets a little complicated, but I'm going to use the sheriff's office because they're so big, and I hope the sheriff's office doesn't mind that I do this. But if we change the patrol officers, that is it's a chain event. So let's say the patrol officers go to, pay grade 26. Well, there needs to be at least 4 pay grades between each position. Otherwise, when they get a promotion, they don't get a pay increase. And we had that with one of the positions that we've corrected this year. We have corrected it with the corporal position because somebody would get a position to corporal and then go to sergeant, and there wouldn't be an increase. So we've corrected those. So it's not as easy as just saying we want to lift all the detention officers up to another pay grade. I mean, that we can do that, but when we do, it channels all of them all the way up because you've got to have the separation so that their supervisors get pay increases as well. Otherwise, a detention officer might be making the same pay grade as a corporal, and that would not be effective. Nobody would want to be a corporal. So I want to be mindful when we're talking about that. I will always advocate for our employees having the best salary that we can afford to give them. But I do want in those bigger departments that has chain of command, that chain of command, when we start adjusting one, it is a trickle effect all the way up. So I just want to be mindful of that. When we looked at doing the 3.25%, which is what we've recommended based on the salary information, there were multiple departments that had outliers that were more than 10% underpaid. And so we look at those positions and say, okay, if they're more than 10% underpaid, how do we adjust that? If we added the 1%, which was one of the things that this body had mentioned was an additional percent, it takes care of some of those positions, but it does not take care of all. However, if we if we look at the positions that have the highest turnover, has the highest need based on a public safety circumstance, you know, where we're talking about our ambulance, we're talking about our sheriff's office, then that's where, you know, you might want to adjust in those areas. But
Just so to clarify, you're saying, though, we don't have the time this year to specifically do that?
we don't have the time this year to do what we would like to do, and I do think it would be beneficial. We don't have the time to do the experience credit. I do think that will be a huge help to take us from 5 years experience to honoring. So say somebody had been a patrol officer, you know, for 12 years somewhere else, and we give them experience credit up to 10. Right now we're only doing 5. That gets them further up our table, and it makes the transition, either it makes it a promotion, you know, monetarily favorable for them to have the additional experience credit. I think that's a wonderful idea, and I'm an advocate for it, but I don't physically, I don't think we can get that done for the whole county, for sure.
I understand where you're coming from now. But basically, what you were talking about earlier, right now we're proposing a 3.25% increase to the table. We could actually change that percentage, and we could do that because we'd have the time to do it if that was the will of the commission. But anyway, that's one of the options, Commissioner or Chairman Harris, that we would have if we decided to go that way.
Right. Michael and I both, when we create our spreadsheets, we put I'll call it a box in there where we can adjust the pay table, and we can plug in the percentages, and it recalculates our tables. So that's one button versus touching everybody individually, because the experience credit is literally touching you. It's all individual. So.
Mr. Chairman.
Michael, you got something first? You're recognized, Commissioner Urban.
Okay, so we lifted the table of 3.25%, and then we've also, correct me if I'm wrong, done a lift for reclassifications, and is that already built into a revised table, or was it? I'm just trying to be sure I'm on the same page.
Let me clarify some stuff that's in the budget that we've went through all the last 3 meetings that we've had. So currently in front of you includes a 3.25% lift to the table. Okay, everybody would get that. Then there is a 1.75 step increase. Now, let me clarify. That's if you've been in the position essentially a year. I mean, there's an hour limit on there, but essentially it's a year. That also, the budget in front of you includes some position reclassifications. For example, at the sheriff's office, when we fix some improprieties there, that does a chain reaction to the ones above it, or you would have created another impropriety. That is also included in what's in front of you. And I'm just using them as an example because I know recently we've had some issues where if you got a promotion, you didn't get a raise, which we've fixed that. We have also, as part of this proposal, raised the county minimum wage. That is also in front of you. Now, that mainly affected our kennel attendants, our convenience center attendants, things like that, where we're having trouble there. That is all included in what's in front of you now.
Okay, I got the 3.125, or 3.25. I'm still a little unclear. The 1.75 step is an additional
So,
to
yes,
every?
that's how we got to the approximate 5%. Now, what that means is if I'm a step 10 this year and I go to step 11 next year, I would get 1.75, but the table also got raised 3.25. So the majority of employees would get the 5%, and that's kind of what when we started this budget, we kind of tied that to the elected official salary increase as our starting point. And inflation, that's correct. And so the majority of employees would get both of those, the 3.25% lift to the table and the 1.75. However, for example, if you were new to the county and you just started your position, I hired somebody 2 months ago in my department or a month ago, they're not eligible for the step increase because you have to be in that position a year. So they would only get the lift to the table, not the step increase.
Okay, so 3.25 lift to the table, 1.75 because of the step increase. got that so far. It gets them to about 5 points, give or take. And then, in addition to that, there was apparently been for some positions, there's been an increase to increase the minimum wage to 16. Have there been other reclasses in the system other than those 3 changes?
Yes, there's been various reclasses, individual reclasses from, for example, if somebody's, as we work through the budget, we'll look and see maybe somebody's job description doesn't line up, so we'll fix that. Or maybe we messed up somebody when they got hired 2 years ago, so we'll fix those improprieties. But also, if when we find an impropriety, we fix that, and sometimes that has a chain reaction. That's what Sonia was talking about at the sheriff's office, where if somebody got a promotion, they didn't get a raise. And so it was very hard for people to want to apply for that promotion if you didn't get any more money for the increased responsibilities. And so when we fixed that, we had to change the grade. So for example, if that position's grade was a grade 20, and to fix that, we had to move it to a grade 21 or a grade 22, it gave a chain reaction to some of the positions above it, or else it would have caused the same issue. And so we have fixed that small errors. And they were minimal impact to the budget. I mean, they were not large impacts. That may have impacted something 0.5% or something like that, but we fixed those improprieties, and those are various across the departments. And some of those were changes mandatory because of the position, the duty they were doing maybe didn't align with their description, or maybe in one instance we found where a person was doing the exact same job, had the exact same title in 2 different departments, but they were paid differently, and so we fixed those, and that's pretty normal for us to fix year to year. Again, they have very minimal impacts on the budget. It may be 1 grade or 1 step that we fix that, but there's various reclasses across the entire budget.
And how many people were impacted, and what's the total impact to the budget?
Sonia, what was that, roughly 200 and something reclasses, roughly?
It was,
I believe she read that number.
$118 people affected.
Okay, and the total dollar was?
I don't break it out. I don't break them out necessarily. I don't break mine out by dollar because I'm putting what their current salary is, what their step would be, and all that into one, so I don't keep that separate, the reclass.
It would take me a minute to get you a calculation. I can just say it's minimal.
Okay, fair enough.
For right now on the spot.
Okay.
Any other questions for Sonia on what's been covered so far?
I do want to say that Sonia and Michael and I have talked a lot about this over the last couple of months, maybe 3 months, something like that. And listening to the directors, and one of the things Chairman Harris referenced earlier was how do we continue to be competitive, because we're just not competing with other municipalities and counties and the state. We're also competing with the private sector for skilled people. And one of the biggest disadvantages that we have is the experience that we offer is capped at 5 years. That is something that we absolutely want to change and go to 10 years, but we just don't have the time to do it this budget cycle. So that is something that we're going to target next year. And that's why Sonia specifically referenced that. We're not just saying that. That is something that we get, especially, and I see Mr. Gaither back there. Brian has talked about this being a significant impediment to the fact that he has 12 open positions, and he's constantly having to fight to keep the good people he has, and it's because of experience. And Brian, if you've got something different in that regard, but that's been my understanding.
Make sure your mic's on. I can't hear you very well.
I will tell you that of the group that I was telling you about, most of them said that they were doing similar to us in between 2 and 3%. But I think where the issue comes in for again, the sheriff's office, I hate to keep throwing them up, but just so that, we're aware of it, that if their positions are already, if a patrol officer's already above us in pay today, and they add another 2% to it, and, we add 325, we're closing the gap, but we're not getting it to where it might be competitive for people to come over, I guess is what I would say in that respect. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're talking about. Are you taking into, and I know especially a lot of the younger generation, what are they, Xers? I don't know, I'm not up on that. But we offer insurance benefits that a lot of these positions don't have. And, if you just look at dollars to dollars, they may say, well, yeah, we'll start you a little more. They may make $5,000 more or something like that. But if you look at their total benefit package and look at longevity with staying with the county, and I think we're more competitive in that respect. Now, you may correct me if I've got a misconception going on there.
Well, and I will tell you that the city of Murfreesboro, which is obviously one of our big competitors, they're the largest city, and that's who we compete against all the time. For all of our public safety positions, whether it be the sheriff's office against their, City of Murfreesboro Police, or, our communications. One of the advantages that we do have is TCRS, but I will tell you that the City of Murfreesboro is entertaining the idea or looking at it. So that's been kind of our one-up thing that's kind of helped us with some people who do look at the entire compensation package to say, what does that look like for me long term? And that's been a benefit for us. But if that changes, that could be problematic for us moving forward.
Quick question, Mr. Chairman. Is Murfreesboro looking at the hybrid or the legacy?
Well, they would have to look at the hybrid, because once you leave the legacy, you can't come back under the legacy. And they moved out of, they had TCRS, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, and they went away from it, and they did a defined contribution plan as opposed. So they have a matching plan. So if the employee doesn't put anything in, they don't match it. And so they did away with their TCRS legacy plan. So if they came back in, it would be a hybrid plan.
I want to clarify. We're talking about the city itself, not the city school system. Right. They are still part of TCRS, and then they do have certain matching with both 457 and 401k over at the city. So they're a little bit different than your typical private sector employee.
But if the employee doesn't put anything in, they don't match. So.
Tanya, anything else?
Right.
Michael, I've got a question for you and something for this committee. Well, first I'll ask the committee, have y'all got any questions or suggestions? Or Chairman, you recognize.
Thank you. If I could ask one thing, I don't mean to throw a monkey wrench in that, but there have been times in the past where we've changed benefit plans in mid-year, like January 1st. Is it possible to do your work and implement a different pay plan January 1st?
I've got to tell you, some of the cities do that. City of Murfreesboro last 2 or 3 years has done a pay increase July 1, and then they've done another one in January. So there are some entities that do that. It's just, are you going to have the money available to do that? That would be my question. Now, I could have the information to you by January, but we've never done that before. It doesn't mean we can, I guess.
The thought was, everyone that mentioned says they're supportive of this. Why not do it in mid-year, make a mid-year adjustment? Michael, you're frowning, so I know there's probably problems with doing that, and that's just the reason I brought it up. What are they?
I definitely think it's doable. I mean, if we wanted to implement something mid-year, I think the biggest con, a lot of the cities, they have a different fee structure than we do. You know, as we've talked about through their capital and some of that, they have some additional fees. They can raise some of those fees mid-year, and they have done so. For example, everything from sewer tap fees to development, impact fees, they can raise some of those mid-year. And so where our budget is mainly constrained for the most part by property tax. And so I think that's probably why I hesitate to do some of that stuff mid-year, because also when you get to December for us, we still haven't got all of our property tax in, and so we're not sure where we're going to end. You know, if you need to give me if I need to give you an accurate number, the most accurate I can give you on property tax is going to be in March after February. But at that point, you might as well wait 2 months and implement it as part of the budget process. And just to summarize kind of what Sonia said, I think we have to touch every single person, their application, to go back and touch everybody. So that just takes a lot of time. Not that we're not willing to do it, and we want to do it. And we've started that work. When we realized that was an issue, we've started that work to touch everybody, but we're pulling the old paper personnel files, going through them. At the same time, we're also trying to digitize them, so I think that's the good part too. And so I think to Chairman Harris's question earlier, ask what are your options? I think obviously one option that we've done here that's doable is something increasing the lift of the table. That's easy to quantify, that's quicker to do if that's something that we wanted to do as well. But when it gets into touching individual people, there's a lot more time and effort into that to check and make sure that we get all that entered accurately, that job descriptions are correctly, and stuff like that. So I think that's why we say on the 5 to 10 year experience thing, we want to be able to be as accurate as possible.
And let me add to that. Chairman Phillips, I specifically talked to Rogers Anderson, Williamson County Mayor, about this. He and I had a conversation about this, 6 weeks ago, and because I was talking about how we were probably going to propose a 5%, and he said, we do a 4% in July, and then we're going to do another 2% in January. And I said, well, how are you able to do that? And the response was exactly like Michael just said. They have a lot more latitude because of impact fees and development taxes in Williamson County that we don't have. And so we're kind of constrained by essentially a single source of revenue that tends to be lagging. And so we don't have, that's another example of us not having the same flexibility of one of our sister counties. That's the long and short of it, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Harris.
First of all, I understand where you're going, I understand the mayor, I understand Mike, but we have a problem now. So how do we fix the problem that we got now? 12 ambulance, we don't have 12 EMS, 35, how do we fix that now? I understand next year, I do, I understand it. It makes sense, but we got to do something now. So what do you think we can do with this budget this year to help alleviate the problems we got right now?
So we're doing the 3 1/4 lift to the table and a 1.75 step increase. So that's a real something. 5% is doing something now. And as I talk to the directors and their needs to attract quality people and keep the people they have, Chairman, that's the biggest goal, and that's what we've been trying to do the last 2 years, is keep up with the rate of inflation and keep up with what the state's doing. The state puts a lot of pressure on local, with their pay increases. Aside from that, the next priority is the experience piece. Now, what Sonia and Michael have said is, can we do a little bit more this budget cycle? Yeah, we can. My only hesitancy is not that we can't do another %, but what does that take away from us doing what we want to do next year with the experience? Because the next year's budget, Chairman, I'm worried, just to be real candid. I'm worried, and I don't want to bite off more than we can chew with regard to the raises. I'm very comfortable with 5%. We probably could do 6%. But then that 1% extra, what is the unintended consequence of doing that? But we certainly could do it. And I wouldn't object to it. I want to be conservative.
One thing else I want to throw out there while the rest of the committee is thinking, something that Commissioner Johnson's brought to my attention about the state troopers. At one time, he happened to be associated with that group, in case y'all didn't know, but they have a longevity pay, once a year type bonus, and I think we do too. What is ours right now?
$25 a year.
Okay, that is something, and that doesn't sound like much, but that increases and adds on to each year. Is that correct?
correct.
So you've been here 10 years, $250 bonus, is that right? Am I doing my math right?
Yes.
But anyway, you know, that doesn't sound like much, but then again, at Christmas time, you know, that's a nice benefit, and that's something, too, that would be affordable, and it could be increased a lot more than what it is. There's a lot of different options. Of course, the mayor mentioned the 1%. You know, that's something I would suggest we can look at. You know, how would that affect us next year? That's what worries me about it, too. But it also worries me not having these positions filled. Sonia?
And that was one of the, I mean, we looked at so many different items. We looked at the longevity pay as well. But our thought was, yeah, that impacts some of our employees, but it would not impact all of our employees because you have to be here. You have to complete 3 fiscal years. That's how the state and the others are set up as well. You have to complete 3 fiscal years of service in order to get the longevity pay. So that means somebody would have had to have been here 4 years in order to get it. So that wouldn't have done an immediate impact to the employees to make that. And I did want to tell you, you know, I think Mr. Irvin, Commissioner Irvin, you asked the question, what did those reclassifications, and I wasn't thinking at the time, but I had calculated that. And so just for like the sheriff's office, the reclassifications that we did for the sheriff's office, and this is only the pay at the current pay table with their step, but the reclassification cost $380,000 just for those positions, and then we added the 3.25 on top of that. But so, and that was just their department, and I could tell you what it is for the rest of the county as well. But when you reclass, you have to think you're touching all those, so that's going to affect them all, and that didn't. That wasn't affecting, just so you know, that wasn't affecting all the patrol officers and the detention officers. We were trying to correct the corporals, and we were trying to correct the warrants officers and some of those other employees. So if you did detention and jail on top of that, it's going to be more than $380,000, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Any other comments from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Sonia. One question, and looking at it a little more from a private industry perspective, which I realize we're not, but I'm trying to sort out, I know what we've done in the past, what I've done in other businesses, both at an entrepreneurial level and small businesses and even at huge ones. If you have a specific need or positions that are not being filled, you set up some form of a bonus program of some sort that folks can basically receive upfront. They can receive staggered over by quarter. Yeah, they could receive it staggered over a year or two. I mean, if it seems, what I'm hearing is the main driver is current pay. You know, everything else seems to be kind of, you know, there, but maybe not the main driver. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if that's the main driver, and we set up some kind of bonus for the 40 positions, and then you have to deal, obviously, with the folks who are there currently, okay, in a fair way. But if you set up some kind of, it's not truly, and it would only last for the period of time that it took to solve the 5 to 10 year problem, whatever problem along those lines. In other words, you could stagger it beyond that. You could do percentages beyond that, but you could, you know, basically set up a deal where it addressed the problem until we can solve it, you know, next year, presumably.
Talking about like a one-time bonus for a sign-on?
Well, it doesn't have to be. Yes, it could be a one-time deal. It could be a sign-on bonus for the hypothetical folks that work at, you know, hypothetically the folks who work at the jail. Just pick one, whose real pay is 51 or whatever it is, or who is it? The jail people that are 51, whatever. It's not critical. But I'm just trying to think through. Okay, if there's a differential there, then. And we believe that next year we can solve it, then why don't we take a look at Okay, we can't do it. There's some analysis that has to go into this, because you want to incentivize people to come to work for you. You want them to stick around for at least the period of time till you can solve it. So you're probably looking at quarterly payments of some sort. Okay, and at that point, you're probably looking pretty close. You know, you're looking at the 350 plus the load, or whatever we call it around here, the additional benefit components. Okay, in that, and then presumably at the end of the year, 2 years or whatever, there would be a fix, okay, that would basically grandfather everybody in at that higher level, so you wouldn't have to, basically it's a one-time deal, but it's a transitional bonus, basically. You see what I'm saying, or no? Is that, I mean, has that ever been kind of looked at or considered? Because basically, I mean, what we're talking about is we've got a deficit. We have I'm gathering people are really focused on current pay, you know? And if they're really focused on current pay, then let's give them the current pay and deal with the transition over the next year.
Tanya, you want to address?
So that group that I participate with, that's one of the things that we discussed, because that was a question I asked if anybody was doing that, and there were only 2 entities in the group that were actually doing that, and they do a prorated amount. But the issue is that it's only for the new hires, so it does nothing to offset the difference for the people that are existing, so the existing people don't get anything, and so a new hire comes in, and let's say you're going to do $1,000 sign-on bonus, and they give them $250, you know, the first quarter, and then another $250 the next quarter.
Okay.
But it doesn't incentivize anybody who's already here.
So then
how they're set up now.
Then the question is, do we extend it to the folks who are already just that one-time transitional increase for those positions? Because I think we've established that they're very focused on current dollars, and they're very focused on what the amount is in the for the transitional period. I'm not. This isn't fully formed. I'm just listening to what everybody's saying, and I'm trying to put together a bridge to get to the 10-year level. Okay, and you don't have to necessarily limit it to the folks who are, because presumably you'd go back through all of the analysis, and you'd say, hey, this person should have got the additional points or years credit, right? I mean, that's what theoretically would take so long to do. Is that right? You know, you'd have to go back through all.
I've already done all of those. I've already done that. It's just the additional going from 5 to 10. But you'd be better off. I mean, honestly, if you're going to give it to everybody, you're better off just giving them the lift to the table and just doing it. Because if you give them the money,
I'm lifting it to the positions that we are having the most trouble filling, that we're talking about. I understood that those are the positions that we're talking about increasing from 5 to 10.
No, we were talking about increasing everybody with their experience credits. So if we had a corporal that had 10 years experience, that corporal would get to come on with an additional 10. It wouldn't just be patrol. It would be anybody in the department would get the additional experience credit. And if we only did it, like if we only did it for detention and patrol, then those people will end up making more money than our corporals would, and then that creates an issue, an internal issue, pressure within. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm following with you. I'm just thinking just about the conversation that would create.
I'm trying to create a situation where we solve the positions that are most in demand. If other positions then become more in demand, presumably, we could address those as well in one fashion or another. Or maybe as part of the bigger picture, then we could, as part of the bigger picture, we could look at increasing along the lines of what you're talking about in the cost. But I'm focusing on the positions that are at the greatest need right now.
We'll recognize Sheriff for a moment.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm very much against that because of the other 600 employees that I've got. What we're trying to fix with the bonus or whatnot, let me give you an example. My detention people start at $42,000. Williamson County starts at $52,000. We've got, let's see, what's the other one here? The other one's Montgomery County starts at $50,000. So we got a huge gap in our starting salary. Patrol starts at $47,879. The city starts at $56,486. Williamson County starts at $54,829. Wilson County $53,622. Montgomery County $50,000. So a $1,000 bonus is not going to tickle my people a whole lot. I mean, I understand what you're trying to do, but I've got 656 employees I've got to think about. We're that far behind. I hear Sonia, and since I've been here as a sheriff, I hear next year. For some reason, next year never comes. We never get to fix this thing for the next year. We've made some strides in separation. What she says about our promotions, nobody wanted to be promoted because they didn't get any money. And it's kind of crazy when I'm responsible for myself, but you're going to promote me and I'm responsible for 6 to 8 other people. Why do I want to take that on for no pay? It makes no sense.
So Sheriff, if we did a 1% increase across the board for everybody, that would help in some.
Anything we do would help.
Okay, so Michael, if I'm correct, 1% would be around a little under 900,000?
Roughly. I mean, I understand the budget. I understand taxes. I understand there's only so much at the well. But I also understand the problem. I've got 80 vacancies right now. And it's not just detention. I told you 35 last week. I had 2 more detention officers resign since Wednesday. So now I'm at 37. I don't have anybody standing at the door begging to come in. We're going out and having to recruit with other people. We're putting advertisements at shopping centers. We're having job fairs. We're going to Fort Campbell. We're doing everything that we know to do. But frankly, and I know salary's not everything, but God, folks, I got to get in the ball game somehow. I'm not even in the ball game. I'm not even close. Not when you got $10,000 difference. And I'm not even talking about the state. You know, when we get to the state, we're getting into the $60,000. I've lost 2 detectives, valuable detectives. Huge amount of training, advanced training, FBI training, and I've lost them to the state. I can't replace that. I can't replace 15 years of service immediately, but that's what we're faced with. And I don't have anything to offer these people when they come in and talk to me about that. But I mean, I'm just talking about reality, just a reality. I've got competition in this city, in this town, in this county. I don't even have to worry about outside the county. I've got the competition in the county for people. So it's just the reality. I appreciate Sonia, I appreciate what everybody says, but I have heard we're going to fix it next year for 7 years. And like I said, for some reason, next year just never comes. So that's reality.
Quick question. How many different job Mr. Sheriff?
I'm sorry?
How many different job categories do you have vacancies in?
SRO, detention, patrol.
And what's the, okay, SRO, what's the other one, detention?
Detention, SROs, patrol,
Okay,
warrants,
and do you have
warrants,
Pardon
warrants,
warrants?
courthouse.
Okay, and what are the greatest job, where's the highest need? I mean, in terms of the
SROs, patrol.
the most open positions.
SROs, patrol,
How many of those?
17,
Four.
and 3 is 20 in SRO patrol.
Okay, so 20 in SRO patrol? Okay.
37 in detention. Then I've got three vacancies in Warrenton, which that's our front office that serves warrants, handles all the public that comes in. I've got courthouse, 3 right now in courthouse, 3 vacancies at the courthouse, which I'm charged with responsibility for security of that courthouse, security of the judges.
Okay, so there's 20 at the SROs.
I'm sorry?
20 at the SRO, and how many?
20 with 3 SRO and 17 patrol.
Oh.
So it'd be, or 20, because they're all the same level.
Okay. So that's the greatest need.
And then 37 in detention.
In terms of vacancies.
Yes, sir.
And, okay.
That's
and
our
so,
biggest, you know, we've got 3 to 4 scattered among our other vacancies. And that's where I'm $10,000 difference in patrol and SRO. I'm $10,000 difference in detention from our
So
competitors.
if you had an extra $10,000 per person, you could fill those positions?
I'm not going to sit here and tell you I can fill every position. I will say on the front end, salary is not everything, but it puts me in a ball game to give them something to offer. I think we've got more to offer in terms of movement, upward mobility, but I've got to get in the game as far as salaries.
Okay, and one way to get them in the game would be $10,000 per person, staggered bonus, percentage bonus, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I'd like to get in the equal level with the people that we compete with on a starting salary. And of course, when you do that, now you got to understand that you starting salary, then that ripples all the way through, all the way up through your other. It's not just
Right.
starting
And
salary.
then I'm not talking about leaving behind the other folks at some point. I'm trying to figure out a way to level it and address the greatest need.
Well, you address patrol and detention salaries, you've addressed the greatest need. But that ripple goes all the way through, because we've got, what, 22 levels right now, pay levels, pay grades, pay steps. So that ripples all the way through that. It's not just a starting salary.
Okay, that's fair. I need to understand more about that. Fair.
And Sonia can explain that, but you bring up your start, then what it does is what she talks about is compresses, then that compresses everybody. So you've got to ripple that through your 22 steps.
To get him to his point, we'll just take a patrol officer. To get him to what the city's making now, it would take a 9% lift to the table. In addition to the 3.25 where we're already at.
Well, I'm just talking about it. I'm talking only about the positions. That's why I asked how many positions there are.
I get that, but you can't just lift the patrol officers, because then your patrol officers are going to be making more than your corporals, your detectives, your sergeants, your lieutenants, your captains. So you can't just affect the patrol officers. And so to affect the patrol officers, we're at a 3.25 lift. With the 3.25 lift, to get his officers to what the city's making, it would take another 9% lift. So you're looking at 12.25% to get us even, and that doesn't take up for what they would be. I mean, you'd essentially have to lift it about 15% in order to catch up and surpass what the others are paying. And that then would affect everybody.
Let me ask a question, Sonia, kind of interject something here. When we've looked at our salaries in the past, especially in our public safety divisions, what we decided was we no longer wanted to be on the bottom. And exactly where did we tell you we wanted to aim for? So we're basically, of the people that she studied, we're in the middle.
Right. This
To
body
make
said
this change, to move to the top of the pack or to be even with them, you know, that's what we need to look at. What's that going to cost us? Now, you mentioned you threw out 12.25%.
I mean, that's if you were taking them to, and the other thing, if we're always, if that's always going to be our comparison as the city of Murfreesboro, then there's no reason to compare to anybody else. Does that make sense?
It does, but I mean, that's the very top that you were looking at.
We have always, I've always been directed to be at the 50th percentile, which, you know, you can be at the 25th percentile, which is paying, you know, less than everybody, and then 50 is, you know, the average of everybody, because that's what it is. This survey is what's the average of everybody we've done.
Well, that's why I wanted you to explain that to this committee, you know, what we had been aiming at when we looked at this in the past. You know, if we want to change that, what we need to know is what's it's going to cost us to move up from 50 percentile level. Michael, you got to...
Yeah, I'd like to point out two or three things. One, if we're comparing to the city and let's say Williamson County, for example, Williamson County has a pension, but you're a contributory there. They contribute 5% of your salary directly to the pension. We're non-contributory here. So I think when we start comparing apples to apples across all the counties, I don't think it's so much that we have to match exactly dollar for dollar with the starting salary. So when we looked at the 5% raise this year, we were trying to do the best we could with the balanced budget and keep in the same range as close as we could. And so obviously the city doesn't have a pension. So if you think about it, right now our pension rate for next year is 11.88. So you're not going to get that 401k match at the city. So I think to keep that in mind as we look at pay increases. Now, I will say Chairman Harris was correct with it's approximately, I will say a 1% lift to the county general fund is approximately $900,000, give or take a few thousand. A 1%, then you would have a 1% lift if you're doing this across the board to ambulance service, which would be another 150 or so thousand to the ambulance service fund. And then Bishop's fund would be somewhere in that range as well. Now, keep in mind, you know, that's just general fund that I read you for the 900,000 for every, you know, that's for the 1%. Of course, as you go up each percent, that's going to get more. But I do want to say we looked at this as a compensation package. And I'm going to speak a little bit for the mayor, but because I know we talked about this, we looked at it, and Sonia met with us too, as a compensation package. We looked at several options. There were some options that we really liked that we just didn't have time to do. So I don't want anybody out there to think we didn't look at that. We talked with the sheriff's office, with EMS, with even some of our more administrative departments, OIT. And so I think we tried to do the best we could with the current funding we had. And so with keeping into account that our pension rate is really good, you know, really who on the pension rate we compete with is the state. They're one of the only people around here that are non-contributory that match directly when it comes to that. So just thought I'd point those things out and kind of read the dollar
And let
amounts.
me say this, I agreed with the mayor on what has been come up, and I'm very happy as far as what's been done on the separation as far as the management levels and what we did there. And the 5% puts us closer in the ballgame. What I don't want to do is wait until May, June of next year, and we start this discussion then. The time is now. We get past this budget, and then we start the discussion on what we need to do. When we get into May, June, it's too late. And we do this every year, and it's too late. It's way too late. But I would like for those discussions to take place. Let's get past this budget year and let those discussions take place on what we need to do in an organized and sensible way in accordance with what the budget will allow us to do, and see if there's something that we can do to try to fix this situation. The mayor and I have met, and we agreed on this year's budget. We agreed with him on what we're going to do. I'm just telling you the plight that we're in. My comment on we're going to do something next year, well, the next year always is in May, June, we start talking about this, and it's way too late then. We need to have that discussion sooner.
So if I could, Mr. Chairman, let me concur with the sheriff. The history is that this becomes an issue before I got here, and it's happened. And let's make, I'm going to commit to changing that. So you're right, when we get to talking budget in May and June, or April, May and June, it's too late for that budget cycle. So you have my commitment that when we get to July, we're going to address the disparities that you have referenced specifically, with the idea of targeting to the extent that we can, because we just don't know what the next 6 months look like, but what can we do January 1, going back to Chairman Harris's reference earlier. What can we do? What can't we do? And do we need to wait till the next budget year? But at least we've already done the heavy lifting and the legwork necessary to quantify what impact that's going to have by fixing these disparities. Does that work, Sheriff?
That works for me.
I mean,
because
you have my promise on. You have my promise on that. Now, that's not a promise for an outcome.
I understand.
But that is a. Yeah, and to be clear, we have already started that process. You're right. We only start that process when we start working on the budget in March and April, and then it kind of gets behind us a little bit.
And I agree. I mean, you know, we're behind the 8 ball now. I know that Michael and the sheriff, the mayor has worked, and they know what the budget figures are looking like. I just don't want the discussion the next year to come May, June and say, well, it's too late this year. Let's wait until next year. And I agree with that. Like I said, I'm not trying to go against what, because the mayor and I have met and we have agreed, and I agreed with him on what we've got for this year, and understanding that's based on the revenue that we've got coming in. But if we can start that process of trying to fix what we've got, then yes, I'm very much agreeable to that.
I've got a couple things I want to add right quick. When our current mayor came into office, he had a large deficit to work with. You know, no fault of his own, but I want to put the fault where it actually blames, where in my opinion, that falls, and that was us as commissioners decided to give pay raises. A lot of that deficit that you had out there was for pay raises. Now, those of you that don't follow our budget, if you look at the 5 major counties in this state, we've got the lowest tax rate. We've got the lowest debt ratio, other than I think Hamilton may be a little bit under us. But we do a very good job of managing our dollars. Now, we've also got to take care of our employees, and that's part of it. And I want y'all all, part of the reason Sonia's up here doing this now, of course the sheriff, is I know all of us want to do as much as we can to fill these offices and to make that pay equitable. Anyway, that's some food for thought. The only thing I want to add is, Michael, I'd like to see a report on if we raise this instead of 3.25, if we added another 1%, what that would end up and how that would impact us. And I don't really want to get into that tonight. I think we've drug on long enough. Unless I see something different from the committee, I'm about to adjourn us. But just kind of for homework, if you'll move that up, if you want to make a comment.
That exact number, I can read it. I mean, not that we got to get into it. If I raise the general fund 1% to the pay table, it's $887,000 and some change.
But that's reoccurring. 887,000. So, you know, that would be something that is doable. But I want, homework-wise, I want to know what that's going to do to us next year when we start looking at our budget.
Mr. Chairman, that's my only concern next year.
Is that for everyone in the general fund or just the public safety?
Nope, that's for everybody. It's for everybody.
For 1%.
Yep. And then like I read earlier, it would be approximately, and I'm giving a round number here, 150,000, give or take a few thousand for ambulance service, and then a little bit less than that for the 116 Bishops Fund.
And we already established $350,000 tonight on changing the budget. So we saved the budget $350,000 so far. So it's 880 minus 350. Mayor Carr's got a point. Yeah, yes, you've always been conservative. But I'm also conservative too, but I also see the need here. And I think we should do a 1% increase and help as much as we can. It's $880,000, that means we got to find $500 and something thousand.
So the question isn't whether they're deserving or whether there isn't the need. I think that was settled.
Yes.
Everybody agrees on that. I think maybe I am being overly cautious about next year.
Not at all.
And I accept that if I am, but at the same time, it's like, it's a struggle. We got to take our most. I've made this clear 1,000 times, and I'll continue to beat the table on it. Our most valuable asset is the people that work for the county, that serves the public. That's our number one asset, and I'm committed, like you all are, to taking care of them. At the same time, though, we have to have a balanced budget, and we have to guard against unnecessary increases in property taxes. Mr. Chairman, if I might, we have another meeting after this, do we not?
We meet the 28th, I think, is our next meeting. You're talking about Budget Committee.
So we meet on the 28th for a joint meeting for the school board to come over here. And then on the 30th, we will meet to propose the annual budget for publication. So that's where we'll meet to put it in the paper and things like that. So the 28th will be the joint Health and Ed and Budget Committee, and the 30th will be to give us direction, the Finance Office, for the budget publication.
The reason I ask, Mr. Chairman, is could we allow Michael to go back and take that question you posed to him under advisement, and then could we put it on the agenda for the 28th to come back and have a final answer for this committee to determine what we want to do additionally, if anything? Would that be too late?
I don't think it would be too late. Being able to find something.
But if a member wants to make a motion now, I'm not going to object to it. It would help me to be settled on what the impact is for next year, which is the only outstanding question for me.
I'm okay, Mr. Chairman, not making a motion tonight and get everything else, because I have some questions where we could get some money out of fund, what is capital growth?
You're talking about for schools?
Yes.
177.
177. So I'm looking at situations where we might could get some money out of that as well. And we had the right to do that. So I think we need to slow down. Let's get through this. Let's get some questions answered. As far as I need some questions, Mayor, get your questions answered, and then we meet up again and talk about it. But as for this commissioner, I'm going right now looking for $880,000. So that's what I'm wanting to do. So I'm going to do whatever I can to do that, and I am at the full discretion of this committee and the mayor and the chairman. All I'm trying to do is do something. And I'm not saying you're not doing anything. Don't ever take it that way, because I'm not intending that. But I am wanting to give a 1% across the board. That's where I am, me personally. So my objective is try to find $880,000, $350,000 down. Now I got $550 more to go.
I won't make a promise we'll do that on the 28th. It's the 28th. We're going to be looking at the school's budget. We're going to have our hands full, but either if we do have time on the 28th, we can address it, but if not, we'll look at it on the 30th. Any other questions? Hearing none. Chairman Phillips.
Yeah, if you don't mind, bear with me for a minute. Last year, when we got into the last meeting, the meeting that we reviewed the budget and the proposed tax increase, there were a couple of suggestions that came out of budget. One was a revenue source from maybe some type of a fire tax, and the other was wheel tax increase. And what we did was refer those to public safety. Public safety last fall took a look at at fire tax and said absolutely positively not. The steering committee looked at what it would take to increase our wheel tax and pass that information along. What I'd like to do, if it's possible, Michael, is for you to come back with what maybe a $5 or a $10 increase to the wheel tax effective January 1st would look like in preparation for next year's budget as well, how that's distributed and what that might mean to our budget. So if you could come back with that and we could take a look at maybe what that could mean to us going into next year. I don't want to wait until that review process to have that information available to us. Does that make sense?
Anyone else? We're adjourned.
Trying to throw